And, ladies and gentlemen, we are live with episode 1 of the Lore Vault. I am joined today by High King Fëanor Alpha Chad of Middle Earth, aka Lost History 9 on X, and we're going to be talking a little bit of Lord of the Rings, Tolkien Legendarium, potentially some other stuff as things go on. Thank you all very much for being here today. Hopefully my glorious mod Aridhale can tell me how the audio sounds below in a moment. Yes, that is what we're doing tonight. So thank you very much, dude, for being here.
For sure.
Greatly appreciated. And yeah, I guess we'll just get right into it.
Cool.
By the way, chat blurps are disabled, so now no loud farting sounds midstream. Hopefully, I got that turned off properly, so we should be good. Okay, so. First question here, very easy. What was the first book of J.R.R. Tolkien's that you read?
Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay.
I was 10 years old at the time. It was 2001. It was right before the Jackson trilogy came out. And I saw the trailers for Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, and I was so hyped because I was already into fantasy medieval stuff. My dad showed me Conan at a very young age, and just kind of that aesthetic. I was totally into it as a kid, and still am to this day. And when I saw the trailer, I was super hyped. And my dad, God bless him, I'm so glad he did this for me. He told me, he's like, "Listen, I'll take you to go see that movie in theaters, but you have to read all the Lord of the Rings books first." So started with Fellowship of the Ring, got all the way through Return of the King, and then once I finished Return of the King, we went and saw the movie.
Your dad sounds
So
incredibly based. Is it the first thing I'd
yeah,
like to say there?
oh yeah, yeah.
For me personally, I think we wound up reading The Hobbit on the way to one of my siblings' music lessons. I think my brother read it out loud. And then several years later, we were sitting there. I think I was like 12. My dad was like, he's sitting there scrolling through the TV, like looking for what to watch. And I got to see the back half of Return of the King. The extended edition, Return of the King. And I was hooked. I was on. So I wound up watching that, and I was like, I gotta get more of this. And my brother was like, yeah, the movies are good, but they're not like super lore accurate. You should go and other brother was like, you should go and read the Silmarillion. And he's like, and then you should read the books, the other books, the trilogy. And I was like, okay. So I badgered my mom for about a year and a half, and I finally got her to get me the big fat box set, which I actually have right here, of the Silmarillion audiobook, if it will actually pick up. There we go.
Very cool.
Which is, that's the one edited by Christopher Tolkien and read by Martin Shaw. So it has like all the unfinished tales and everything in it. And it's really, really good. Would suggest to anyone who does a lot of driving. Hail Ben, good to see you. And also hi to the rest of the chat. Good to see you guys. Gonna mostly be focusing on the interview, but it is much appreciated that you are here tonight. And then I read the trilogy. And I loved it. It was great. And then I proceeded to do the thing that probably made every one of my siblings hate me, which was I listened to the Silmarillion audiobook on repeat until I basically wore the discs out for about the next 3 years.
That's kind of what I did with my copy of the Silmarillion. Is I ended up having to buy a new one because it was so worn out from me reading it repeatedly over and over and over again.
I'm afraid to go get my copy of The Return of the King, the book. Let's just put it this way. It is very, very, very well loved.
Yeah.
I have to keep it over in my desk inside the drawer so I don't lose any of the pages.
Well, it's kind of funny that you said, because you said you started with The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
The Hobbit out of the entire Legendarium, I'm talking Book of Lost Tales, Unfinished Tales, The History of Middle Earth, The Silmarillion, Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit was the last book I read.
Really?
It was the last one.
Okay.
Because
1 second, 1 second. Aaron
you're good.
Hale says that your audio is not quite what it should be, so I'm gonna bump you up to
let me see if I
151%.
can-
That should be good. Speak
Okay.
now.
Okay, cool.
Good.
All right.
Should be good.
All right. Quick check, chat. Do we sound optimal?
Are we where we should be or no? If I
Do
need to
boost myself? If I can.
I can boost you too. Probably. Let's not make it weird. Anyway, but yeah. Should be good. Audio check, Aaron Hale.
Okay, cool. All right, do we do check 1 2? Check 1 2. How are we sounding?
One moment. I need to 1 second. There we go. Yeah, we're good. Okay, still
cool.
a bit
Perfect.
quiet. I'll turn you up just a hair. Give me a second. Here on OBS. Okay, you should be good. Should be good.
Okay,
now.
perfect.
Okay. But yeah. Yeah. I got really into the. That's the first time it's done that in a while. I guess Stream Elements has just decided to start working again after several months of not doing so. I got really into the books from there. I basically lived and breathed the Silmarillion for about 3 years, and then got away and I read a lot of other fantasy. I read Conan, Solomon Kane. I'm currently, and this is for reasons of channel, I'm going through and reading Game of Thrones. Yeah, I know. I'm about a third of the way through with A Dance with Dragons. Okay, I'm gonna turn you up just a hair more because they're complaining down there. Okay.
Let me see if I can do anything on my end.
You sound much louder now.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say like Discord's saying my audio is good, so
yeah,
and my input volume's maxed.
It might be some weird thing with the way OBS is functioning.
Yeah, it could be.
But yeah, and I told my other brother that I'm the youngest of 6. I have four brothers, 1 sister. Second oldest brother. That is perfect. Good, Aaron Hale. Thank you very much. Right there. Good, man. Okay.
Very good.
That I was like, yeah, I'm reading Game of Thrones. He's like, what's it like? I'm like, okay, think of Tolkien like a really good home-cooked meal, okay? That's J.R.R. Tolkien. That's Lord of the Rings. George R. R. Martin's writing is the greasy truck stop chicken of fantasy. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah,
like
yeah, it really is.
Like, if you're starving to death, it probably tastes great. But if you're reading like good quality stuff around it,
right? You're
like, this is kind of crap, though.
Right.
Which I'm sure I'll make some people mad by saying that, but I don't care. I've been reading all the way through his series for the last week and a half. 2 weeks? 2 weeks now. 2 weeks now. I read very fast, so I tend to go through. I tore through the entire trilogy in about 2 weeks. The last time I read all of it, so yeah. I'm that kind of autist. But yeah. Like, well, if you were to pick one part of the lore and setting, like one part, and you were to call it your favorite, and I know this is going to be like, choosing which of your kids is your favorite, but
right.
If you were to pick one part of the lore and setting, what would it be? Like, what is your thing?
So I really, if I had to go with anything specific, I would have to go with First Age, prior to the Dagor Bragolok, the Battle of Sudden Flame, and when the elves kind of like solidified their position in the Siege of Angband. That, because I think it was like something like 200 years if memory serves, that, or maybe not that long. I forget how long the siege lasted, but just that period where Balerion kind of had it was pretty much the only time Balerion had any semblance of peace. And it just kind of imagining what that was like, and
yeah, the High Noldor period. Yeah.
Yeah, really the High Noldor period when they were at their peak before kind of everything started falling apart. Um, just I would say just that whole and leading all the way through the Battle of Sudden Flame and Fingolfin versus Morgoth. That kind of that time frame there, that period would probably be my favorite. Um, and you especially in the Silmarillion, you get Tolkien does such a beautiful job of painting a picture for you, kind of to generate in your own mind of what everything looks like, where everything is, how characters are behaving, how the different races and groups of people and everything is interacting with each other. It is incredible, and I think it's incredibly well illustrated in that time frame
Yeah, yeah,
specifically.
I would agree there. I remember when I first got to that part, and you're reading about it, and the houses of men and the elves are kind of coming together to work towards this common goal of keeping Melkor at bay,
Hmm.
and then you get like, and the reason they're all of them have their own motivations for doing it. Like, you have the Noldor have their oath. They have their oath, and that is their primary guiding force in doing this. Because there are several of the members who, by that time, like even by that time, who were seriously considering abandoning the quest for the jewels, and they would have probably done so, like even among the sons of Feanor, if I remember correctly,
Yeah, it
um,
was Sons of Fëanor. Yeah.
who would have done so save for their oath. But they made that
Yeah.
oath, and that oath bound them to the siege. You know, and
Well, and
you have
the
among the
thing,
forces of men, you have oh, what's his name? I think he's like the
Barahir
I think
or
it's one,
Bayor.
not Bayor, the other guy. I think he's the father of the Haleth, of the Haladin.
Oh, oh no, I know who you're talking about. Oh shoot.
But his motivations are Morgoth sent a spy that was basically wearing his face to speak against the Naldoran council when he didn't say anything. And he knows
Hmm.
because, like he walks in on the council as, they're discussing what he said, air quotes, and he's like, and I now myself have an enmity set between me and this Lord of Lies, you know? And that's his entire motivation for going to the Noldor and taking service with them with his people. Because beforehand he was
Uh,
like, I'm gonna leave.
yeah,
But
yeah.
after that happened, it's like, it's on.
Well, it's interesting. So if you look at kind of like all the Elven kingdoms during that time period, you have, and you talked about motivation. So you have Fingolfin, whose obvious motivation, he's High King of the Noldor. It's up to him he's the end all be all of decision making. So it's his job to make sure that everything's protected, and he needs the assistance of the Sons of Feanor and other various different groups to achieve that siege and that kind of containment of Morgoth. You have the Sons of Feanor, who obviously are kind of hamstrung by the stupid oath they made back in Valinor to obtain the Silmarils and get them bring them back to the House of Feanor.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Elwë Singolo, aka Thingol of Doriath. He's got his own motivations. He's protecting the kingdom of Doriath. He does not like the Noldor at all.
For good reason.
Um, for good, well, I mean, I think at a certain point, I mean, given the fact that
I'm a Thingol simp, so you're gonna get a bit there from me.
okay, no, fair enough. But I think from a strategic point of view, it was incredibly unwise of Thingol to just shun the Noldor and shut them out. Because
It was.
if there would have been some assistance from Doriath during a couple of battles, not just the Bragolok, but also unnumbered tiers, if they would have actually sent a substantial force to aid the Noldor, chances are they would have defeated Morgoth. But unfortunately, no such force came because of Thingol's disdain for the Noldor.
Yeah.
Um, Now you have that. You have men coming into the picture. You have the dwarves of Belagost and Nogrod. They have, um, they're very keen on trading with the Noldor and sharing crafts and things of that
And
nature. It's
knowledge. That was one of the
in
big parts
knowledge.
of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you have kind of all these moving pieces at the same time. And then of course you have Morgoth and Angband. Just kind of sitting there stewing essentially. Building
And
it.
his motivations are pretty simple. He wants to be king of the world. That's
Yeah.
that's his
Yeah.
motivations.
Yeah,
Um,
King of the World. He wants a world in his image is what he
mhm.
wants.
Which
And yeah, go ahead.
which will probably get us into a little bit of the philosophy here, because Morgoth's first sin, Melkor's first sin, is the same first sin as Lucifer from the Bible. You know, it's
Mm.
him sitting there and being like, "And I shall sit in the place of the Most High, and I shall be called God." You know,
Yeah,
that's exactly the same thing, and the results are basically the same because eventually he's cast out, or
yeah.
rather, in Melkor's case, he comes to Middle Earth, but by
Well,
choice.
he kind of casts himself out in a way.
Yeah,
Because in spite of all of his wrongdoing during the Song of the Ainur and him searching for oh, what is it called? The Everlasting
the
Fire, I
yeah
believe is what it
yeah
is. Yeah, yeah.
the everlasting
And
flame.
the Everlasting Flame, thank you. And him doing all of this stuff, he uh, Iluvatar still looks upon him as one of his children. You know, he's not looking at him as like this entity that needs to be cast out.
No,
And obviously, Iluvatar has foresight, and Iluvatar, everything that happens within Middle Earth is to his design, more or less. We can talk a little bit about that later, because there are some things that went awry, but overall, Morgoth, Melkor is still, even though Melkor does a lot of terrible things, ultimately it's still to Iluvatar's design in the end.
mm-hmm.
But as far as like the philosophy of it, obviously there's a lot taken from Catholicism, Christianity,
Of course.
but I would not say again. Morgoth is kind of his own undoing. It's not a case of. I don't like the one-to-one comparison of him and Lucifer
Yeah, it's not
because
exactly one to one because
yeah,
there's several things that are very different.
yeah,
Like some of their action, a lot of their actions and motivations are different in some ways. Like his actions as how he functions, comparatively to like what we read of Lucifer in the Bible. He's not just constantly sitting over here tempting people.
right.
He's more taking an actual effort, an active, constant effort to turn the world to his cause. Like when they're
Hmm.
discussing the creation of Arda and Beleriand, the other Valar are constantly, like Ulmo would make seas and he would, raise them up, and, you know, Yavanna would
Yeah,
grow forests and he'd fill them with monsters. Like
yeah.
there's a lot he's a lot more active, I would say, than Lucifer as far as like
He is
actual visible actions
he is
in Middle
very
Earth.
much a he is very much a reaction to everyone else's actions.
Yeah.
Um, for instance, the whole reason why the Misty Mountains exist is because they're essentially a wall. They were essentially a wall for Morgoth. Um, ages ago when he had Autumno.
Yep.
Similar in the same vein as the Pelori Mountains were after Morgoth had. I believe it was after he had destroyed the trees that they were. No, it was before. It was before. Um, it was because it was before the coming of the elves. They raised the Pelori Mountains in Valinor to be a shielding as Morgoth. So you kind of have these two. The, the world almost has like just geographically speaking two massive natural fortresses on it
Mm-hmm.
that are fighting with each other. Um,
That probably is a good segue
yeah,
into explaining something for the people who don't read the lore. We should probably explain like why the Valar didn't just immediately go and attack him, because a lot of people, I think, get Middle Earth wrong, and that they're like, oh well, the Valar basically just don't care, or they have no interest in helping the elves and men, and that's really not the
that's
case, because
that's categorically false. Yeah,
yeah, it is categorically false, because if you actually look into the lore, every time the Valar and Morgoth fight, it's like people slinging nukes around on that's a extremely dumbed down version, but basically it's like
yeah,
people slinging nukes around like they're confetti, you know?
yeah. No,
It's
100%. Well, I mean, all I tell people when they bring that up, whenever somebody says, well, why didn't the Valar just intervene, after the death of the two trees, why didn't they just go and sack Angband immediately and take Morgoth prisoner again? And I said, well, you can find your answer in the War of Wrath, because in the War of Wrath, you didn't have any Valar. You had the Vanyar, you had some of the Noldor, you had some men, and you had quite a few Maiar and
Mm-hmm.
Eagles and blah, 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 blah. And the entire realm of Beleriand was destroyed in that conflict. Throw the Valar in there and see what the world looks like. I mean, the entire reason why the Valar didn't want to go and just automatically declare war on Morgoth was because of the wanton destruction it would cause. It would be the mind cannot imagine what that kind of destruction would be. I mean, and they got the
We
thing that kind of Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
well,
Sorry.
we know what happened the last time they fought, because
Yeah,
you have to
Autumnal.
remember
Yeah.
that the first time Middle Earth is made, when Middle Earth is first made, they've set, like, up this beautiful, perfect, basically Garden of Eden realm, and Morgoth just comes in and destroys it all.
Yeah.
Like, he burns the world by casting the sun down on it. Because there's been two suns and moons in Middle Earth's history. Um,
Hmm.
the first one didn't end well.
Yeah. Yeah. The lamps.
Yeah.
The lamps. Yeah. And the thing of the other thing is too. This actually is a great thing to touch on, because it highlights a mistake that the Valar made because of the destruction of that ensued from the siege of Autumno and their war with Morgoth. The Valar got very scared about what would happen to the firstborn,
Mm-hmm.
which is why they took a lot of the firstborn to Valinor. And I forget which letter it is, but J.R.R. Tolkien highlighted why that was actually a mistake and act against the will of Iluvatar. What Iluvatar wanted was for elves and men to grow up together in Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of catastrophes that could have been avoided had the Valar protected the elves but not brought them to Valinor, you would have avoided the kinslaying, the death of the trees. There's a myriad of different things that could have been avoided. Um, had the Valar not stepped in and kind of migrated all the elves across the sea.
That is largely true. I would agree with that, because if you
Yeah.
look at the way a lot of what goes down goes down, if the elves had remained in Middle Earth, the elves
Yeah.
had remained in Middle Earth, and if men had come into the world alongside them, one, um, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears would have probably ended very differently, because men would not have been born into the shadow of Morgoth.
Yep.
They would have been brought
Mm-hmm.
into the world in the wisdom and teaching of both the Valar and the Noldor. And they would have been raised as a culture and as a civilization and as basically a species to be more like the elves. They basically you would have had all of humanity wind up like the Adain, instead of the Adain being the minority and people like the Easterlings and the Haradrim and
Right.
the Minafar Khand would have been the minority. But that's, if you actually go into the history of Middle Earth, the Númenóreans and the Adain, the faithful, are a small group of men. It can at least part the fall of men to the side of Melkor and their seduction by his power and strength wouldn't have happened if the elves and the Valar had allowed them to grow up together as a pair of races. Because the Eldar
Yeah.
probably would have acted more like, I believe it was Finrod. It was Finrod
It was.
Felagund who found them originally,
Yeah.
right?
He's the first of the Noldor who encountered men. Mm-hmm.
They would have acted more like him. They would have acted
Yeah.
as Felagund did, and been a teacher and a guiding hand to man. And
Right.
I think humanity would have in Middle Earth would have probably ended up a lot more like the Adain.
Yeah.
And that
It's
could have
it,
that could have prevented like an entire list, like a laundry list of problems.
Well, I mean, and the other thing that you would have avoided had you kind of had the way that Iluvatar envisioned it was the enmity between the different elf groups would have been avoided. You wouldn't have had, like we talked about earlier, you wouldn't have had kind of the disdain that Thingol had for the Noldor. You wouldn't have had um, enmity with the dwarves. You
Well,
know,
they wouldn't have developed as sundered peoples if that had
yeah,
happened. They would
exactly,
have developed
exactly.
as more as a separate groups of kindreds who cared for each other more closely. Because
Yeah,
if you had all of these races arising in close proximity to each other, they would have been forced, basically by proximity alone, to become closer knit as a culture and as a community.
right.
The dwarves would have grown up among men and elves, and men would have grown up with the teaching of, both of the elder races, and probably with the Valar as well, if they had not withdrawn to Valinor. There's a lot that could have been avoided if a different path had been chosen, but the path we get, as Tolkien puts it, in the sorrow from that comes much of the beauty of Middle Earth.
Oh,
Excuse me. But yeah, I need water. 1 second.
oh, you're good.
And I think that's one of the most interesting things, because of the way Tolkien, from a conceptual standpoint, handles suffering in his
Mhm.
setting. It's not handled in the same way as... 1 second here.
You all right? Okay, no
Sorry
worries.
about that. Apparently I'm not as done with that cold as I thought I was.
Ah, hot tea with lemon.
Yeah. But about drowned myself in that on Monday. Um, but yeah, I think that's one of the big differences between the way Tolkien handles suffering, human or otherwise, and the way a lot of other authors who are more humanistic in their approach do. Because it's handled more not just from a Christian perspective,
Mhm.
but also from the perspective of... I don't know if you've ever read the poem The Wanderer.
Mm-mm.
You should. It's read The Wanderer, and then you'll get some stuff in Middle Earth
Okay.
a little more, because it's if you've ever, where now is the horse and the rider, where is the horn that
Yeah.
was blowing, that's basically one for one. Because
Mm.
Tolkien's
Gotcha.
one of the people who translated that.
Oh, fair enough.
Um, and if you look at the ending passage to that, is basically all of this, even even the terrible stuff, is ordered to the will of to the will of the one, to the will of God, after a fashion. So even if in the moment it doesn't seem as it's going to the plan of Iluvatar, it is ultimately going to work for his will, which is kind of what he tells Melkor after the Ainur Lindela, where he's like, and know this, Melkor might be the mightiest of the Maiar, but it's still going according to what I wanted, you know,
Right.
which I find interesting, because it's not something you hear from a lot of the people who, because I think we're probably gonna have to wind up talking about this as well, but there are a lot of people who will say that J.R.R. Tolkien's Legendarium is one thing or another, and a lot of them will be like, well, it is an expressly Christian work. And while that's true,
Mm-hmm.
you also have to remember that Tolkien was taking a lot of influences from old mythology that goes back a long time. Now, a lot of that mythology that he was either translating or drawing influence from was translated into English by Catholic monks, like back in very old times in England, translated from Danish or Anglo-Saxon or Finnish. So it has that like you can see this with Beowulf. You can see where the parts of Beowulf that are like the original legend, and then you can see the parts that are more like translated through the lens of a Catholic priest. And that is super interesting to me. Because
well, I mean,
go
the
ahead.
Children of Hurin, the Children of Hurin is it's not quite one for one, but it was heavily inspired by the story of Kullervo.
Yes. Like the Children of Hurin is basically like it is very close. And chat, if you read the story of Kullervo is the inspiration for the Children of Hurin, Michael Moorcock's Elric, and The Witcher. So that there's 3 franchises that all draw from the same source there. Pretty heavily. If you read like, and you can make some arguments about like Michael Moorcock pulling more from Tolkien than the story of Kullervo. Because like there's stuff with Elric, like let's just get this out of the way. The black sword, the evil black sword, like that's kind of obvious, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we know what you're doing here.
Well, you know what's interesting? I have just a little side tangent here about that sword. I never considered that sword evil. A lot of Tolkien fans do.
I don't necessarily consider it evil.
Yeah.
I say evil black sword because that's a way of basically dumbing it down, but
yeah,
the sword has a reason for doing what it does.
I've heard, I've read, I say I've heard, I've read things where people are saying that that the Black Sword Gurthang is very much a villain in the story. And I'm like, no, it isn't. If you actually read about that sword, yes, the smith who made it was very much a villain, and kind of his essence, if you will, his spirit lingers on that sword. But if you read about what that sword does, it's actually very, in a way, if it's wielded by the right person, the sword is very much a protagonist.
Yes.
It very much is. It weeps when it takes the life of the innocent, and it delights in battle against evil. I mean, like it's it's very much not a bad guy, not a bad character.
At the end of the story, not to spoil too much here, but at the end of the story, it kind of functions as the final arbitrator of justice. You know,
yeah, 100%.
Because when it speaks to Turin,
I will drink thy blood gladly for the blood that you have shed unjustly.
Yeah, for the blood of Beleg, my master.
Yeah. Even though that was kind of an accident, but I
mean, that was an accident, but still, I mean, we would probably count that as manslaughter, but
yeah, 100%.
But yeah. That is something that has always struck me deeply, is because there are a lot of people who are like, oh, like this, that, or the other is extremely simplified and dumbed down. But if you actually read it, it's much more complicated. The sword in there, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just evil. It's like, it does stuff that on the surface might appear as such, but not really.
Right.
It doesn't always necessarily serve its master in the best way possible, and Melian does warn Beleg about that, but it's...
I don't want to take this,
But it's still a worthy weapon.
And little Tolkien lore tidbit about that sword, it still exists up until all the way through the Third Age. And it's kind of wild that you never... It's one of the things I would love if J.R.R. Tolkien was in a room with us right now. I would ask him about it, because if you look at a map of Middle-earth, and this is corroborated by the Silmarillion, there is the island of Tol Morwen. It's where Turin is buried.
Okay.
He's buried with the black sword. It's broken in two.
Okay.
If you have a grave robber, or if you are in universe, you know your history of Middle-earth, you just take a little boat over to Tol Morwen, dig up his grave real quick, get the sword, and take it to the elves to reforge it.
Okay. Now and because you did this, we're now going to probably have to get into another thing, because we're gonna have to talk about the Jackson trilogy a little bit here.
Oh no.
Okay. So we're both going to be very unpopular with the audience here, because as movies, just as movies, not as adaptations, but as movies, I rate the Tolkien trilogy very highly. I consider them very good films. As adaptations, They're like a
Oh,
3.5, 4
there
on
there are
the.
two for me.
Oh
Two for
God.
me.
Okay.
There are two. Two,
Okay.
arguably one. The thing of it is, right? Okay, I'm glad you brought this up. So people talk. I think people fixate too much on. Well, first of all, they kind of have their blinders on when it comes to these movies because of how well they are crafted, which 100% they are. The amount of work that went into those films is unparalleled. But you have to look into, if we're talking about an adaptation, you have to look into how characters are portrayed. You have to look into kind of like the order of events, things that were omitted that are incredibly important. For instance, the scouring of the Shire should have never taken that out of the films. I don't care what anybody else says. My biggest thing is, while they did get some sort of things aesthetically correct, in my opinion. For instance, Christopher Lee's Saruman, Ian McKellen's Gandalf, as characters from an aesthetic and I would say portrayal standpoint. Overall, the vast majority of the characters in in those films are antithetical to who they were in the books.
I'd
Uh,
agree with that actually.
Faramir, Sam, Denethor, Aragorn, Frodo, even. Gimli is not a goofball in the books. Gimli is an incredibly serious character in the books. You know, there's just so much there. I would say Elrond is another one. Um, the one that I really, well, actually, I would say the three, as far as like demeanor and motivation that they got pretty much on point, were Saruman, Gandalf, and Galadriel. Those are the three. Everybody else was very much tampered with. And I on the thing of it is, right? If we're going to judge an adaptation and like kind of quantify how loyal it is to or how accurate it is to the source that it's drawing from and kind of put a percentage on it, um, I shouldn't be able to go into an adaptation like I can go in the Jackson trilogy right now, starting at the 0 mark of Fellowship of the Ring, and I can point out 8 to 10 different problems within the first 5 minutes
Oh yeah.
of the film.
Oh yeah. Well, for me,
And I
for me there are like four main cardinal sins. That's like really narrowing it down of the Jackson trilogy. One of the things I hate the most that they changed is Aragorn as a character.
Yes,
Aragorn is ruined.
reluctant hero. Yeah,
Aragorn is ruined as a
oh,
character because I think one of the big problems with Aragorn is because they try to make Aragorn's character development happen in the movies. Aragorn's character development isn't even like remotely similar in the books in any way, shape, or form. And his attitude is completely different. And the reason for that is because they're trying to make a 80 something year old man have the character development of a 20-year-old.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, 100%.
Aragorn, by the time of the films, has been a captain of men for, let me see. So when he was 21, no, 20, 21? I think it's 21. I can check. When he was 21, Elrond tells him who he is. Gives him the shards of Narsil, gives him the Ring of Barahir, and is like, yeah, this is who you are, this is who you're gonna have to be. And he's like, and I'm not giving you the scepter yet because you haven't earned it. But once you earn that, this is who you will be. And then basically immediately following that, he meets Arwen for the first time, and that gives him his motivations to be king because Elrond tells him, yeah, my daughter is not marrying anyone less than the king of Gondor, you know. And
Yeah, 100%. And also Aragorn's kind of character development is not from him. There is never a point. If I recall correctly, granted, it's been a while since I've read through Aragorn's entire history of his life, but I'm pretty sure there's never a point in his entire character arc in the books where he's ever reluctant about being king. Ever.
yeah, no,
What
he's
he does, what he does as a character is he gains the experience needed for him to be a good king.
mm-hmm.
through when he fought with the Rohirrim, and just in his travels, because Aragorn did a lot of traveling in his youth.
Yeah, he in his youth, like
Um,
he goes to Gondor and serves
mhm.
with the Steward of Gondor, Denethor's dad, for a long time.
Ecthelion, yeah.
Yeah, he serves with Ecthelion. He meets Prince Imril of Dol Amroth.
Mm.
He meets Denethor, and he meets if I remember correctly. No, that's another character. Never mind. Um,
He fought with Thengel,
he thought with
Theoden's father.
he fought with Theoden's with Theoden's dad, and
Hmm.
he was running under an assumed name, but
Yeah.
he's been all over Middle Earth, and then he came home and he takes command of the Edain, and all of the Rangers of the North answer to him.
Hmm.
He's the one who sets the watch on the Shire and makes sure that no orcs or trolls get in, and that's something he actually has to do because they're looking for the ring.
And well, I'll tell you, I know there's quite a few people like yourself who say Aragorn is probably the most ruined character. Many people say Faramir.
Yeah.
My friend on X, who I've streamed with before, Miss Martin Muses, she absolutely abhors how they portrayed Faramir in the films. Um, my personal uh, my personal thought on the whole subject, and my personal choice, is actually Isildur.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I can see that.
Isildur, his uh, in the Jackson trilogy, they portray him as incredibly weak-minded. He immediately gets corrupted by the ring, and then when they show his death, he's portrayed as being very smug and arrogant, and it's the entire thing is completely antithetical to what happened in the books. For those who are listening to this, whether they're listening now or listen on the replay, Isildur took the ring as a blood payment for the death of Anarion and Elendil. He did not take the ring because he was tempted by the ring. What occurred after he took the ring was that he tried to wrest control of the ring from Sauron. He wanted to have absolute victory over Sauron by making the ring his. And he realized he couldn't do it. He was humbled by the ring. He did not have the power um, to wrest that power from Sauron. And so what he ended up doing, which is the scene that you technically see in the Jackson trilogy when he's on horseback and they get ambushed by orcs, he is actually riding to in canonically, he is riding to Rivendell with the ring to relinquish it to Elrond because he has been humbled by it and he no longer wants to have it in his possession. He wants to be rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it it sets the stage, I think, in the Jackson trilogy, where too much emphasis is put on the power of the frickin' ring.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I really believe that, and constantly it's used as a obviously Boromir is tempted by it in the books,
Mm-hmm.
but other than
Faramir's not.
that, Faramir's not. Aragorn isn't. I mean, there and really the only character of men that we see who is not tempted by it and actually is in the films tempted by it a little bit but chooses not to fall prey to his temptation is Aragorn, and that's the only reason why they did that was just because of reasons of the plot. They couldn't do that. And it really makes men in the films appear much more weaker, or much more weaker, much
So,
weaker than they actually were in the books.
I mean, we're gonna have to talk about this because I
Yeah.
think all of the races are poorly portrayed in the movies. The dwarves are badly
100%.
portrayed. The elves are badly
Yeah.
portrayed.
Mm.
Humans are just bad. Like they're just it's awful because a like we could go over the entire thing with the Rohirrim because by the time of the films,
Yeah.
by the time of the movies, the Rohirrim they're getting the King of Rohan, Theoden, is getting Wormtongue constantly whispering in his ear, and he's
Hmm.
constantly twisting him with, Saruman's sorcery. And that does have to be thrown off, but he hasn't like exiled Eomer like they have in the movies. Like he's in chains, locked up, but he's not like, it's not it's not like the way they show it in the films. And the way they act after he is freed is very different. Like Gandalf urges him to go to war, like to open war with the orcs, and he's like, no, I can't do that because I don't have the numbers. Like he just doesn't have them. And they wind up going to Helm's Deep because of that, but his motivations are actually very smart in the books, which he comes off as rather foolish in the movies,
Yeah.
which I didn't like.
Um, and well, another part too is uh the Battle of Pelennor Fields.
Oh yeah,
Um, Theoden didn't launch a suicide charge at a giant horde of Mumakil who were coming at him. That's not how it went down. He charged the Haradrim, killed the Haradrim captain, chieftain, what have you. And then it was if memory serves, it was a black dart from a Nazgul that got him.
yeah. It hit his
And
horse, and his horse fell on him.
his horse fell on him. Yep.
And
It wasn't having anything to do with a stupid decision. Good grief.
yeah, and then we could get into the character of Denethor. Denethor is ruined in the movies, like completely.
Yes.
Denethor as a
Yes.
character in the books is described as looking more like a wizard than Gandalf does.
Yeah.
Like he is nearly pure Numenorian for one thing. So he
Yeah.
looks like the noblest of ancient kings. He has the
Yeah.
appearance of this superhuman, wise, powerful individual. He doesn't look like some old man constantly hunched over and, messily eating tomatoes. He is a force of nature to
Yeah.
be reckoned
He's
with.
he's incredibly stern and can come across in the books as a bit of a jerk, but he's not this Shakespearean villain like he is portrayed in the films. He really only goes nuts right at the end during the Siege of Minas Tirith. He's not psychotic throughout. In matter of fact, a lot of his defenses, the way he's orchestrated things, canonically, um, and the risk he has put to kind of boil it all down and put just use kind of one example of that encompasses the character of Denethor. He was in the White Tower with the Palantir, and Sauron couldn't break him. Could not break him. The only thing Sauron could do was try and demoralize him by showing him that how vast and powerful the forces of Mordor were. That's the only thing Sauron could do. And Sauron did try and break him and tried to fool him with illusions and all kinds of other stuff, and it never worked on Denethor. That's how stern and powerful Denethor was. And the fact that they took that character and turned him into what we saw in the films, I think, hey, first of all, because I think the actor who played Denethor, I forget the gentleman's name, but it's obvious he's a very good actor. And so you missed out on an opportunity to portray the character accurately with a talented actor. And number two, you did a complete disservice to the character himself. I, I, watching those films, going back to what the first question that you asked me, one of the reasons why I'm blessed that my dad had me read the books first was because when I saw that in the film, I was genuinely disgusted. I
Yeah.
was like, this is not the character that I read about. What is going on here?
Yeah, and
Um,
there's other stuff, like the way he treats Faramir is completely different in the book as well. Like,
yes.
he
Um,
is
A-
much
A- Eowyn, another great example. She's much more haughty, to use a word, in the books
y-
compared to in the films. In the film, she's very. I don't even know how to describe Eowyn in the film.
Melancholy.
Melancholy, I think, is a very good word. Yeah, you know what? That's perfect. Whereas she's a absolute firebrand in the books, and it takes Faramir kind of being like, "Hey, you need to simmer down a bit before you
Calm
know."
down, hon. I like you a
Yeah.
lot, but if you keep going like you are, you're gonna burn up and die like Fëanor. Just, relax. You
Which
know.
which 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 by the way, if it's anybody's first time ever reading The Lord of the Rings after listening to this, the Houses of Healing chapter, in my opinion, is the best chapter in the entire trilogy of books.
Mm.
IMO. I love
Mm.
that. I love the Houses of Healing chapter.
It's good. It's really good. You know, I now you've said it. Oh God. There are others for me, but that's
Oh,
definitely
again,
got to be like right up there. Like
it's
that's
like
top
picking,
3.
like you said, it's like picking your favorite child, right? Like it's like it's all so good that I mean, um, I would say I don't know how I feel about this. I actually kind of want to get your opinion on it. The one chapter I hear people complain about more than anything is when the hobbits encounter Tom Bombadil.
Oh my God. Um. Okay, I like that chapter a lot.
I
Okay,
do too,
I
but
know.
I understand the complaint.
I understand the complaint. It's very tonally
Yeah,
jarring in a lot of ways.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
But you have to realize like the world you're in.
Yeah,
Middle Earth is not like a lot of other fantasy settings. It's not like something made by like Brandon Sanderson or I mean there are probably Robert Jordan, other fantasy authors. It's not a system with a hard doesn't have a magic setting, technically. Um B, the world is wild. The world
mm,
itself is very wild. You have stuff that just comes out of left field, mentioned in a book and not mentioned anywhere else. The Beornings are a good example of this. Um, like you have skin changers like Beorn that are just mentioned in The Hobbit. They're not really in any of the other stories that I've found. Um, but they're a thing. They've been around forever, but they're just basically never mentioned anywhere else. Um, but they're a very important part of the story because it kind of illustrates that while you have characters with a vast amount of knowledge and understanding of the world, like Bilbo, for example, is recording stuff that goes back tens of thousands of years. Like he's recording the Silmarillion, he's recording the War of Wrath, the Rise of Sauron, all of this. But there's massive gaps in his knowledge, and I would say that Tom Bombadil is one of those. Another, and I think the chapter immediately following that on the Barrow Downs is important too. Like it is massively important. It's part of the reason like the Battle of the Pelennor Fields in the movies doesn't strike as well. Mortal blades can't hurt Nazgul. Like modern as of the movies cannot hurt the Nazgul. Pippin wouldn't have been able to stab him in the ankle if behind the knee, I think. But if
it was
he
Mary.
Mary wouldn't have been able to
Mary.
stab him behind the knee if he was using a normal sword. But he wasn't using a
Yeah, yeah.
normal sword. He was using one of the
No.
blades they pulled from the Barrow Downs. That
Yep.
has to happen for that to work.
Yep.
A normal sword wielded by a man wouldn't have been able to do that. But it's a magic sword pulled from, the tombs of ancient kings. It's a little bit more than that. And
Right.
Bombadil serves another purpose that I don't think many people consider. Something Tolkien said, and you hear this about Faramir, and this often comes up in the debate about how badly Boromir was adapted. Boromir and Faramir were adapted, is Tom Bombadil serves as an example of there are things in Middle-earth more powerful and different in nature to everything else. Tom Bombadil is older than basically everything else in the setting, as from what we can tell. Like he is one of the like progenitor creatures of Middle Earth, and like he is a prime individual, and he is not tempted by the ring at all. Like at all. Like he puts it on the whole like, hey, you should turn invisible now doesn't. It's like he
Yeah.
basically has the power to say, no, this isn't happening. I don't know if you've ever like seen the Skyrim meme of, it's the ring with like 200,000% resistance to magic on it, and the ring is named "The Magic Isn't Real, You Idiot" on it. That's
Yeah.
basically what
Yeah,
Tom
yeah.
Bombadil does. You know.
Right.
So he serves
Well,
as an
and
example of, even if Sauron wins, air quotes, there are still forces in Middle Earth with which he could have a very hard time contending.
yeah. Well, it's even in the if I remember correctly, it's the Council of Elrond chapter. Again, another great chapter.
Oh yeah,
Um,
like that would be
where
top 2 for me.
where they talk about how well they're talking about the different circumstances that would occur, and you would have I forget who the conversation. It might be during the council,
I think
but
it's Gloin who asks, why don't we
yeah,
just give it to Tom Bombadil? And he's like,
yeah,
because A, he'd probably forget about it and lose it, and B, because it doesn't really concern him that much.
yeah.
Like,
Well, and the thing is, well, they also talk about how to kind of piggyback off your point, how places like Rivendell, places like the Old Forest, they if they don't destroy the ring, you're going to have these little pockets in different regions that will be resistant to Sauron, but everything around them is going to burn.
yeah.
It's all going to be taken over. And so it gives our heroes, gives the good peoples of Middle Earth incentive to, yeah, you can give the ring to Bombadil and Sauron will never get it back, but Sauron's still going to burn the whole world down if you don't destroy that ring
And corrupt everything else. Yeah,
and corrupt everything else.
the big thing is, I think a lot of people don't and this brings us around to something else. Like, you brought up the Council of Elrond. All of the factions are there for different reasons. They're not they're not summoned. Not everyone's summoned by Elrond to talk about the ring. That's not like what happens in the movies where it's like, yeah, well, he summons us to talk about the ring. No, the dwarves are there because Sauron has sent them messengers demanding tribute and their oaths in allegiance to him. Now I believe Boromir is there because of the ring.
He's there because I believe it was he and Faramir both had dreams. And it's just kind of it's so incredible how everything in Tolkien's world kind of ties into one another because I believe he and his brother were asleep near the shores of the Anduin. And it's never really concrete.
They don't ever state it, but
that
it's probably Ulmo.
It's probably Ulmo who gives him those dreams like, hey, you gotta go to Riven. Like it's the weapon, not the well, the artifact of the enemy has been found. Like, go to Imladris. But he's there because of essentially an epiphany, more or less. You have the dwarves, like you said, who have been dealing with dark forces who are claiming that they owe tribute. You have,
Which I would like to point out, Dane Ironfoot did refuse them. And
yes.
so did I think it's Bane, Bard's son? Or is it his grandson? Is it Bard the Second?
No,
I can't remember.
It's Brand.
Brand. Right name. Thank
King
you.
Brand. Yeah.
Yeah, he refuses as well. And that leads to a whole thing later, because like in the movies they do a really shit job of explaining this. But in the books, all of the factions not helping with the main like conflict are doing so for very good reasons. The elves are at war. Sauron lays siege to Caras Galadhon. Mirkwood is besieged from Dol Guldur. The dwarves and the people of Dale are under siege, and Dale gets captured and destroyed by the enemy. Like the men and dwarves all hold up in Erebor, but they capture and take Dale.
Yep.
All of the factions who aren't directly helping are not helping for a reason. They're not just not helping because, we can't be bothered.
Well, it's just well the films
You
address it
stop
with a
that, Rez.
well they address it with a throwaway line from Legolas. Um, because Gimli says something like, what I wouldn't give for an army of dwarves fully armed and filthy," and Legolas says, um, uh, "I
War-
fear evil marches on their own lands," and that's like the end of it. Like that's all we get of what's going on in the north of Middle Earth. Um, and it's such a major thing that's happening too, because if those forces of evil, if the Easterlings and the Orcs in the north that are coming out of Dol Guldur and other places, if they don't get defeated, okay, yeah, sure, you defeated Sauron at Pelennor Fields and ultimately destroyed the ring, but you're going to come back and all of your lands are going to be ablaze. If it isn't for the dwarves, the men of Dale, and the elves of Mirkwood and Lothlorien.
yeah, yeah, that is a majorly important point. And there's also
It's huge.
it is something that really bothers me, because in the movies it's like, well, every other race in Middle Earth besides humans, and more specifically like Aragorn and the Rohirrim, because like Gondor, like, and this is, we'll get into this later, but Gondor's like not really portrayed as a kingdom; it's portrayed as like a city state in the movie. Um, every other race is kind of shown as being ineffectual or not doing anything, and that bugs the hell out of me, because every other race is fighting tooth and nail by this point to keep themselves
Oh,
above water.
the the example I use all the time. Sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm so glad you brought this up. The example I use all the time is specifically the Men of Gondor, because in the films they are portrayed as like the ultimate paper tiger. Like they get run over by the orcs, both at Osgiliath and in Minas Tirith. And for anybody who's read the books ever, the Siege of Minas Tirith, the orcs don't get past the first level. The Men of Gondor hold their own and keep them at bay. And even when the Witch King blew the doors down with Grond, the orcs still didn't take the first level of Minas Tirith. Like that's how hard these guys were fighting.
Yeah,
And in the films, they just get ran roughshod. Like it's like, and again, going back to how the races are portrayed, I think it's disgusting. Honestly, like just I remember watching the Siege of Minas Tirith for the first time, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, why are they portraying these men as so weak? I don't get it.
well, one of the first things they do in the books, like if you've actually read the books, chat, you'll know that the scene where like they all ride out to die on the suicidal stupid fucking charge, um,
Yeah.
there's the first thing they do in the books, where they're like throwing down the flowers in front of in front of Faramir and all those guys, the first thing they do in the books is they get all the women and children out.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
empty the city. The city is empty of all women and kids, and Baragon's son is like, you know, I'm lucky I got to stay with dad and fight, but like
Yeah.
everybody else is out of the city. Um and
Yeah. And then
they're sent away in Baragon's words, so that even if they lose, some memory of all that is good and pure may be preserved in some, hidden veil somewhere. Because they've done this before. They've done this before. The Numenorians did this the last time this happened. You know.
Right.
Um.
Well, I mean, they're well accustomed at this point to Sauron besieging them. I mean, you have all the way dating all the way back to the founding of Minas Ithil, which eventually became Minas Morgul. That was a city founded by Isildur, and Sauron blitzkrieged it. It's kind of what started the War of the Last Alliance.
Yeah.
Because and they have a long history of dealing with these sieges. They know exactly what to do. And Tolkien knew what he was doing. First of all, because he saw war firsthand.
Saw war
And
firsthand, Mr. George R. Martin. Tolkien didn't know how to write war. Well, excuse me, you dodge drafted, so you don't get an opinion, sir.
If you actually like scientifically dissect Tolkien's battles, it's very apparent that he absolutely knew how to write war in battles, and it wasn't just because of his experience, it was also because he was incredibly learned on history and the history of warfare.
Yes. Yes.
incredibly so. And so,
It happens when
uh,
when you are the one who reads and then translates like a bunch of accounts of historical battles. It's.
yeah, no, 100%.
Um,
I think I personally, just a quick little side note. I think the battle that where it's best, where his skill in that is best portrayed is Unnumbered Tears, because he paints for you a clear picture of what the elves' goal in that battle is, how they strategically want to manipulate Morgoth into being crushed like a hammer, or between hammer and anvil,
mhm.
is how Tolkien describes it. And you can imagine it perfectly in your mind. It's like, okay, this battle makes sense. How everybody is doing things, both Morgoth and the elves.
They've
Like,
got like the elves have a very solid plan,
yep,
and except for the treachery of men, it probably would have worked. Um,
yeah,
but the elves have a really solid plan.
yep,
Melkor has a genius plan. I mean,
yeah.
it's genius when you're able to mind control people and also, tempt them with promises of
Well,
power and,
he
wealth. But yeah,
he well, the other part of that is that he has a plan, because he somewhat, the what really was unexpected in that battle was the help from Turgon out of Gondolin.
oh
That was
yeah,
the
that
unexpected. 10,000 strong coming out of Gondolin was not something that
anybody
Morgoth saw coming.
anybody except for the high
Anybody.
elves, the leadership of the high elves knew about,
Yeah.
because Morgoth's like, oh, I'm gonna have to kill the sons of Fëanor. I'm gonna have to fight,
Yeah.
gonna have to fight these men who have come out of the east.
Yeah.
Um, there's not much else. Oh, and dwarves. We're gonna have to fight some dwarves. And then he's getting ready to do his
Or,
his big thing, and then you
yeah.
hear the horns in the distance,
Yeah.
and it's
And
Turgon marching up out of there.
well, and the thing of it is too is that Morgoth told his captains, "You have to draw the elves in prematurely by any means necessary. I don't care what you have to do. You have to get them to charge prematurely." And so they had a captured. I mean, they had a captured elf who they dragged out and killed in front of the elves to get the elves pissed off and make them charge premature. I mean, like the strategy in it is so brilliant,
It's very clever.
on both sides, and it's written by a man who knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't even entertain the comparisons between Martin and Tolkien. It's not even close.
I find it humorous because you're
Yeah,
talking about one guy who has experienced actual, like, the most World War I is the most brutal war in human history, basically. It is the perfect example of mechanized warfare on a apocalyptic scale.
yeah.
You have millions of people dying in a single battle. It's
Oh,
horrific.
yeah. Hmm.
And then you have George R. R. Martin over here, who's like, and also Tolkien wrote and read about historical warfare extensively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then you have George R. R. Martin over here, who draft dodges, who's a draft dodger, just kind of just tries to stay out of, and the anti-war hippie. And
Yeah.
I won't get into like super deep detail here, but a lot of his descriptions of battles are not great. Comparatively to like his descriptions of food, because he's a fat fuck and likes talking about food and nothing else pretty much.
Yeah.
But the way Tolkien describes the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, and other battles throughout the setting, it's actually very interesting if you read it, because there is a lot. It's very dense. It's like, that's the difference between eating, truck stop chicken and a good meal. And if you read, for example, the way he discusses the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, or the way the armies of the West array at the last battle, before the Black Gate, there's strategy to it. And it's
Yeah.
well thought out. It's not just, oh, we have them, charge into massed ranks of orcs and, hope that, they can kill them all in a hodgepodge. It's no, they're acting in very ordered fashion.
Right.
And another thing I think that people don't really understand is, like, Tolkien doesn't spend, like, there's a meme that Tolkien will spend 3 pages discussing a tree.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen once. Like,
No,
I think
it
he spends like a paragraph and a half discussing the 2 trees of Valinor. Like, that's both of them, and they're really important parts of the story. But I think he spends like 2 paragraphs max talking about those. And
It's
when it
oh, go
comes to
ahead.
stuff like battles or combat or anything like that, he usually spends
Hmm.
a fairly decent amount of time that is comparable with other writers from around the same-ish time period. Like, I believe a certain a leather bedecked individual pointed out the scene in Moria where it's like, and Legolas killed 2 orcs. Um, it's like, yeah, but then you're ignoring the context of all the stuff going on around that. Like, that's a fight scene where they're discussing, like, and then he stabbed the cave troll with the spear, you know, and it's
I
like, that's deceptive there, because if you read stuff like, for example, Robert E. Howard's Conan stories or Solomon Kane, like, there are parts where it does super in detail, and then it's like, and then he stabbed 2 of the slavers and shot the third. It's like, same thing, kind
yeah.
of. Like, it's comparable. The important stuff is talked about. The stuff that's not so important is ignored because it's, what does
Well,
what does the fight add to the story other than, gore, explosions, excitement?
well, one thing, talking about contrasting the films and the books. Um, the way that Tolkien built up the Durin's Bane in Moria,
Mm-hmm.
where when the Fellowship first encounters him, you don't really know what this thing is. You don't have any kind of. You just know if you don't know anything else about Tolkien lore, and it's your just first time you're just sitting down reading Fellowship of the Ring, you don't know what this thing is. But the way they describe it, where Gandalf's talking about how this creature perceived my spell and shattered the door, and like a whole bunch of there's a really good build up, and then finally when you get to the bridge of Khazad-dûm, you have Legolas scream out, "Oh no, it's a Balrog." I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah,
and then you finally get that kind of revelation, and then if you're a first timer, you're like, "What the hell is a Balrog? Holy crap!" And then
a
Tolkien
shadow
goes
of
into
fire, you know.
describing how his shadows, like wings, went out from wall to wall in the cavern, and like it's so cool. And then in the Jackson trilogy, you have
Big fire demon.
well. Well, I'm not even going to get so much on the how the Balrog was designed. What I'm more harping on is you have um, Saruman, I guess telepathically talking to Gandalf, when he's like, "Oh, you're hesitant to go into those mines because you're aware of what's going on," and then you have them finally in the mines, and then Gandalf just straight up says, "Oh, it's a Balrog, a demon of the ancient world. This foe is beyond any of you." And it's like, wow, that just thanks for killing my suspense in this moment.
Thanks for
Like
ruining the mood.
yeah, in the books it's so much better because you're just like, what have they run into? Like, already this sounds terrifying. you
Yeah,
know?
it's like setting up a candlelight dinner, and then, you're like, and honey, I have one last thing to say. I killed the cat. It's just gonna immediately
Yeah,
just ruin everything.
it's like spoiler warning, Gandalf. Thank you.
You know. Um,
But
I think the way they function, like the way a lot of the ancient horrors are described in the books, are very different and much more interesting than how they're treated in the movie. Like the Watcher. The Watcher is a very different creature in the books.
yeah,
The Balrog it has more of a presence. Like
yeah,
there's no other way to describe the way a lot of these creatures are than they have a presence about them, where
yes,
it's like the horror from them. Yeah, they're physically frightening, they're physically terrifying, but if you read the books, they have a psychic or mental presence that is
yeah.
powerful, and it shrieks of promises of horror and and dread, but you know they're
Well,
not to you yet. They invoke fear. They invoke this is
there's an
something from yeah.
there's an illustration of Durin's Bane that was done. I forget who the artist was who did it. I'll have to find if I'm able to find it, I'll send it to
I
you.
think I know the one you're talking about. Give me just a second.
Yeah.
And I'll send it to you over Discord. I think I know the one you're talking about. I think it's because I think I wound up sending this to a friend when they were covering this topic. They were covering the movies. They were doing a live stream covering the movies, and I was like, yeah, that's not what the Balrog looks like in the books.
No.
And he was like, oh, really? What does he look like? And I was like, he looks like this. Okay. No, back. Thank you. Hopefully this isn't causing my mic to spurg out. There we go. Yeah, that one. There you go.
See here. Yeah, that's the one. Yep.
Yeah, that one.
That's a Balrog. That's because, and the thing that people, the reason I don't like it portrayed as a beast is because while yes, the Maya are technically shapeshifters, you know, they're when they typically take physical form, they're much more
Humanoid.
humanoid, 100%. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Balrog, whether it's Gandalf, Saruman, Sauron, whomever. Their base form is very humanoid.
Well, I think a lot of people forget that the Balrogs are spirits of fire, corrupted
Yes.
fire angels, basically.
Yes.
And they are not. And when we say corrupted fire angels, they're not corrupted like, you see in the films where they're just it's a big monster. No, they are a spirit of fire, and they are still bound to an extent to the laws of Middle Earth. When the Maiar or the Valar take shape in the physical realm, they usually take shapes similar to the children of Ilúvatar. So that would be my explanation for why it would look like that and not quite like, here, giant fire demon.
Well, I mean the steward of the sun in Arda, or around Arda in Ea, whichever term you want to use, the steward of the sun is essentially what a Balrog would be like if it was uncorrupted.
Yes.
It's the Maya.
She's one of the most beautiful things. She's one of the most beautiful things in existence.
Beautiful and powerful. Melkor was It was one of the few Maya that Melkor was genuinely terrified of.
He tried to turn her, if I remember correctly, which ended less than well.
He failed. Yeah. He tried to turn her and I believe it was Olwe, one of the Maya of the Sea, I believe, was it?
I know who you're talking about. I don't remember if that's his name.
I believe it was Olwe, but he tried to turn a couple of them and failed. And yeah, I know it's another tangent, but yeah, one of them was Aryan, and she ended up becoming the Steward of the Sun, incredibly powerful. And you were talking about kind of like that aura that was missing out of the Jackson trilogy when it came to these certain creatures like Balrogs and things like that. You kind of have to have it when you're depicting them.
It's kind of like the Balrog is big and scary in the films, but it's kind of hard to. I understand how difficult that is to portray on film to an extent.
Yeah,
because it's like you're trying to portray a feeling in a visual and sound medium. Like you would have to literally change it from being a standard movie to being a horror film at that point. Like the way it would function, which would I think would be very difficult.
I think if you went the horror route though, because I was just thinking about this, if you decided to go more of the horror suspense route with the Balrog instead of trying to make it like this massive, in a way majestic but also evil, terrifying beast, like the way I'm kind of conceptualizing this in my mind is essentially the exact way that Tolkien described it in the books, where it's just shadow and death and fire.
Yes.
I really think that, quite frankly, kind of the way in a slightly similar vein, and granted I do not like these movies, but in a slightly similar vein to how Jackson portrayed Sauron in the Hobbit movies.
Yes. Yeah, that's something that I was gonna bring up the Jackson movies anyway, so this is an opportunity.
But,
I don't like,
style...
but the way they design Sauron in there, better than in the Lord of the Rings movies. Like he looks more like he is described in the books in the Hobbit movies than he does in the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah.
And I wish they made a lot of the more like powerful things, like the the ring wraiths and the way the Balrog looked more like the way they portray Sauron in there, because it's this kind of, and they do a really good job of keeping you in suspense of what he actually looks like, because he's like always in the corner of the vision of like Gandalf and the other characters for a long time, and then he finally reveals himself. That would have been
I
better than how they kind
yeah.
of did it in the films.
I hate the giant eyeball.
I
I hate the giant eyeball so much. Just like this is I know it's taken from a part of the book, the quote unquote Eye of Sauron, but
A great eye wreathed in flame. Yes,
the great eye wreathed in flame, but it wasn't
it dumbs
he
down the
wasn't
character a
he
lot.
wasn't he wasn't a giant radar dish on a tower, okay? That's not what he was. It's and the other thing too, talking about inaccuracies between the books and the movies, Sauron was regaining. He hadn't regained all of his strength, obviously, because the ring was still missing. But he had regained his physical form.
Yes.
And so
Now he
I
wasn't able to.
think,
Now he wasn't able to take like before anyone in the chat spurgs out. He wasn't able to take
yeah,
form like he had before the fall of Valinor or the the Battle of the Last Alliance. Not
yeah,
he's not going to be taking the form of Anatar, the Lord of Gifts,
yeah, no,
but he is capable of taking that shadowy form you see in Dol
yeah,
Guldur and
he can.
others.
Well, he can still take his Dark Lord form.
Yes.
Because it says it explicitly in the Silmarillion. After the fall of Numenor, his ability to appear fair was taken from him, but he was still a Dark Lord
Dread
that
and
was
powerful,
terrifying,
yes.
dreaded. Yeah. And I think it would have been very interesting in the films if they had done it right. If we could have seen things from kind of Sauron's POV.
That would be
Because
something that would require like I know
all we
you're
get
of a
of him,
I know you're of a similar mind to me on this. That would require a
yeah,
lot of Philippa Boyens and Fran Walsh.
yeah.
Like a lot there, because they're
Well, I agree, and well, I think you have enough to where, at the very least, because you see this with Rings of Power too.
oh god.
While chat, well, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. The Jackson trilogy did not give us enough of a villain to be invested in. Rings of Power did too much to make the villain appear sympathetic.
Rings of Power tried to do what they did with Dracula in the Christopher Lee movies. They tried to make him hot.
Yeah,
Shippable, I
yeah,
believe is the term they would use.
yeah. The
And
thing
then
about
there's the whole yeah.
the thing about Sauron, he's incredibly cunning. He's incredibly mischievous. He is incredibly charismatic. He is also unbelievably cruel.
Yes, there's a
Like to the
reason
point
the
of
Noldor called him Gorthauer. Like that doesn't
yeah, and he's sadistic. He's an incredibly sadistic character, probably the most sadistic character in the entire Legendarium, arguably. I would say I would say he's more sadistic than Morgoth. Just on the fact of, just to give it kind of an example for people who might be unaware, um, he takes his captives and feeds them to Shelob.
And before that, he
And
regularly
and
feeds them to werewolves on the one island.
yeah, yeah, Thorin Gorhoth, yes. And what he does when he sends the captives to Shelob's lair, he has his servants report back to him about how she, quote unquote, played with her food, because he enjoys hearing those stories. That's the kind of character we're talking about here. And it would have been so interesting to get that, because I feel like if the Jackson trilogy had portrayed that in any kind of way, meaningful way, then there would have been more investment into defeating the villain. It's kind of like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of something that the Game of Thrones TV show did very well with Joffrey as an audience member. When you
Yeah,
see the character of Joffrey, you want this SOB to die. You cannot wait for him to get killed.
yeah, the
And I
sadistic
think
creature. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you had done something similar with obviously Sauron isn't one dimensional like Joffrey is, but if you had done something similar with Sauron in those films to kind of get people invested in wanting as an audience member for that being to eventually be defeated, I think it would have done the films a better. It would have done the films more service. Um, Sorry, I know I went off there for a little bit just
You
talking
you
about
are
this, but
you are cool, dude. In comparison to me, you're much more mild than I expected. So thank you. Um,
yeah,
there, I'll revert back to looking at the list here real quick. We should probably just discuss briefly like the current state of the franchise and the Rings of Power thing. I want to ask you this: do you think they're gonna make the next season?
they're gonna make season 3. That's already a guarantee.
Okay.
Do I think they're gonna make seasons 4 and 5? I Here's my thing. It's honestly cheaper for them to cancel it than it is in the long. If you're looking at the long run, it's cheaper for them to cancel it than it is to continue running it because you still
Cancel
have
it
to
and
pay
eat the
for.
lawsuit. Yeah.
Can't well, you don't even you have to eat the lawsuit. I was reading. I read a couple things a few weeks ago where they would have to pay out 20 million per season. So 40 million total to the Tolkien estate if they don't complete seasons 4 and 5.
Okay.
That's that's pennies for Amazon. Like
Yeah.
that's
In
nothing. That
comparison to the brand damage, it would probably be worth it.
yeah, and the thing honestly, my honest opinion, I think what's going on is they had prior to if I have my timeline correct, and anybody can check or DM me whatever, I might have this wrong, but prior to them announcing um that the show had been renewed for a third season, they had canceled Wheel of Time. And I don't think Amazon thought that they could withstand back to back shows that are supposed to be flagship shows, Amazon original shows, being canceled simultaneously, especially considering the combined budget of both those shows. Obviously, Rings of Power has a much bigger budget than Wheel of Time, but that was one of the reasons for Wheel of Time's cancellation was budgetary issues. And if they were having budgetary issues with Wheel of Time, I can't imagine what kind of problems Rings of Power is causing right now.
Well, from what I've heard
Especially,
with Rings
go
of
ahead.
Power is that a
Yeah,
lot of the money on that, which is part of why the production budget is so god, it is so low, is because um they took like three-quarters of the money for the show and invested it into making the new studio to make the show supposedly.
yeah, I believe
So,
that.
and it's like okay, so it's uh allegedly chat, allegedly it is money laundering. Um, you know, it's
I
just
believe it.
it's
I yeah,
oh god.
it's so unreal. And well, the thing of it is, there's a excuse me, there is a Wheel of Time kind of like fan group slash YouTube channel called the White Cloaks. Shout out to the White Cloaks. They're awesome. I've been on stream with them a couple times. They pointed out to me, they said, you should take a look at this. Rings of Power was recycling costumes from Wheel of Time.
What?
Yeah. So if you look at a lot of the extras and some of the items, particularly like when they are showing Numenor, they're the exact same outfits, just kind of slightly like they'll add like a different pin or something like that, just kind of, I guess, make it look different. But yeah, they were recycling costumes and props from Wheel of Time and using them in Rings of Power. So it's like you guys spent well over $1 billion at this point on this show, and I'm not seeing it. Like if you guys are recycling stuff from another TV show on your platform, like, so where's all this money going? It can't be to the actors because prior to there's like two or three actors in this show through the two seasons who I've actually heard of. Um, the rest are pretty much no names. So it can't be to the actors. Well, is it to the directors? Kind of doubt that. Is it to the writers? really doubt that, given the quality of the writing in the show,
So you
or
remember
lack
that
of
meme
quality.
from John A. Douglas on Twitter, like back when all those shows were coming out, that was like, these are 4 different fantasy shows and they all look the same? I think I know where
Yeah,
that comes from now, because they're just
yeah,
literally reusing assets.
they're they're reusing assets,
Oh god.
and and
So Amazon is the crappy Bethesda of TV show studios. Got it. Okay.
yeah. Well, and I would be willing to bet that some of those assets that went to Wheel of Time and ultimately to Rings of Power came from a show that they canceled prior to Rings of Power, which was Carnival Row.
Oh, I remember that.
Carnival Row had good ratings.
It was a it was it was
It
mildly
was
acceptable for a
it
postmodernist
was
fantasy.
yeah, it was a decent show. My lady loved it. I thought it was okay. But it was a decent show. It had good ratings. The budget was pretty reasonable for that show. Amazon killed it.
Yeah, I remember that. Like if I could get like another couple seasons of that instead of this.
Well,
Um,
well, that's kind of the thing, right? If memory serves, I'd have to go back and dig through my old tweets because I posted a whole thread about this. But I believe it was like 4 or 5 television shows that Amazon canceled that all had either mediocre to good ratings, with fairly low budgets, that were all canceled um, prior to Rings of Power Season 1 release. Now, I can't remember all the titles. The one that just sticks out to me the most is Carnival Row. But yeah, it was like 4 or 5 different TV shows. And they canned them all, shut them down, and shoved all their budget into Rings of Power. And
this
so
gives me a sense of deja vu. So,
yeah,
do you remember John Carter of Mars, the movie from
not,
Disney?
not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, so it's based on the book series by Edgar Rice Burroughs, Warlord of Mars, the Barsoom books. Okay,
Yeah.
Bob Iger, if I remember correctly. Now this I could be getting some of my details here could be incorrect, but if I remember correctly, Iger was involved in the scuttling of that film because they basically like they did a bunch of things regarding like theaters and stuff, like the release dates and stuff, to basically intentionally torpedo it before release. Make sure as few people saw it as possible. And the reason they did that, if memory serves me, is so that they could buy a couple of beloved IPs, including Star Wars, and then ship those as theirs instead of having to go with make this new IP. Although Princess of Mars is like 100 and something years old at this point. Um,
Oh, I
that
just real quick, I want to address a comment in the chat. Just to clarify, they didn't cancel Wheel of Time because they needed the wardrobes. They were sharing the wardrobes simultaneously while both shows were airing. Okay, that's what was going on.
so Airtail,
Okay,
remember when you used to give me like the big coats during bad winter? That's basically the same thing.
season one of Rings of Power, when it came out, Wheel of Time was still ongoing. It was still a couple years removed from being canceled. When season one of Rings of Power released, it was recycling and reusing props and costumes from Wheel of Time.
So basically, they were treating the TV shows like the frickin' orphans and like Oliver Twist or something.
Yeah, 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 no, 100%. And
God,
and
that's even worse.
well, and here's the thing too, right? There's also, okay, you would think if you're spending $1 billion on a TV show, you would think that at least the one thing you would have is consistency with CGI in terms of like not just quality, but also design. So the one thing that got memed to death during season two, and I think it's hilarious, is if you compare what season one a Region looks like
Hmm.
to season two, totally different. They're two
Yeah.
totally different places. There's no
Mm-hmm.
consistency. And the green screen work is abhorrent. I've seen better green screen work in CW DC TV
Oh
shows.
yeah, like
Okay,
okay, you
like
remember
I
like the
mean,
late stage like Flash? TV shows. Like, have you
Oh,
ever watched
oh,
that by accident? Turned the TV on and had
Batwoman,
that? It
Batwoman.
looked better than
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Like, it's like,
yeah,
what are you doing here? And
yeah.
now a lot of things are making more sense because now I'm just gonna throw this out here. I think they try and finish the
Mm,
series. For two
mm,
reasons. Okay, one, there's a lot of ego involved, and ego makes people do very stupid things. Um, I think they're gonna try and finish the series. Now, it may get canceled before season 5 happens. It might, they might be able to wrap it up. They might be able to snip it off at, halfway, you know. But I think they're going to try and finish the series for two reasons. Because of ego, and I think that from an ideological standpoint, because we watch a lot of the same stuff from what I've seen of your Twitter.
yeah, yeah.
I think ideologically, Amazon's streaming department is highly ideologically entrenched. I think that they are completely subservient and subsumed by their particular political leanings, which are Marxist. Um, and I don't think these shows are so much about. I don't think that the Rings of Power, and I don't think that Wheel of Time or any of these other shows were really about getting the shows made. It was more about destroying the works of the past. I think a lot of this is an intentional demolition. You know, I'll insert your Alex Jones 9/11 jokes here. You know,
Well, I would interject with this. Jennifer Salke's been removed as the head of Amazon Studios. She's no longer executive producer. She's been shit canned. She got fired. The guy that they brought in, to take over that spot, and I think there's one other executive they brought in as well. If memory serves, they both came from Netflix. And one of these guys is very famous for saying, you have to know when it's time to cut your losses on a TV show if it's losing you money. And Amazon's or and Rings of Power is losing Amazon a good chunk of money. Granted, Amazon's a multi-gajillion dollar corporation; they can eat that budget all day long. But I'm sure they would prefer not to. And and kind of with the the pendulum kind of swinging politically, and
due to recent
it's
events and others.
well, yeah, and kind of with them find I think they're slowly, obviously I think it's going to take another 10, 20 years for entertainment to correct itself, but I think this it's slowly starting to dawn on them that stuff like Rings of Power, stuff like Wheel of Time is not what the general viewing audience wants.
It's not a
And
wise financial decision.
100%.
I would agree with you there.
And
I think they're gonna try. I think they'll try to either finish the show early or cut it off halfway. But I think that they're gonna try and get some kind of closure on it. Kind of a last hurrah, so to speak, a last kind of slap in the face to the fans and the audience
well, here
before they let
here's the
go.
thing though, right? Wheel of Time's last season was the best rated both in terms of critic score and audience score. Now, granted, I know a lot of Wheel of Time fans and kind of a lot of people who do kind of similar stuff that we do. They all thought it was terrible. Um, I didn't watch it personally, but um, but it was still the best rated of all the seasons of Wheel of Time, and they still canceled it. Rings of Power has worse ratings, is losing them more money, has been so disastrous that the head executive at the studio was fired. And you also have the other thing I think people aren't taking into consideration here is the fact of Amazon kind of quietly has been obtaining more and more intellectual properties. They got I believe it was RoboCop they got. I think they're eyeballing Terminator. Like there's a few IPs that they want to play around with. And if they think their money would be better invested in that, and they'll just eat a $40 million loss to the Tolkien estate and wash their hands of it. I think they would do that. I think it would be the wisest move for them. And you also have again, I think it's a terrible show, but people love it for some reason. You have The Boys,
Oh
you have
God.
Reacher, you have other programs that
Reacher's
people
good. The
who
Boys is
yeah,
kind of ass.
but you have I
That's
100%
putting
agree
it
with you.
extremely mildly. My
Lightly,
opinions on
yeah,
The Boys are
but
you go back
you
to
have these
Reddit,
other,
please.
yeah, 100%. But you have these other programs on the streaming platform that the normie audience, so to speak, are much more invested in.
Well,
Normies aren't invested in Rings of Power. They're just not.
I have a pair of normie friends who yeah. Anyway,
Well, I mean, just it's from a statistical point of view.
yes,
If you
from a
look at
statistical point of view, it's not. I tend to, when it comes to statistics between anecdotes, I tend to trust anecdotes more often than not because, like, for example, statistics can be twisted a lot more. It's like what the studios were doing with parrot analytics for a long time. Of, oh, people are talking about, Captain Marvel or, Rings of Power. People are just eating this up. And it, in fact, was people are talking about it because it's shit.
yeah.
It's just absolute garbage.
Well, what I mean is like, so when I see the stat line from Rings of Power season 1 where they lost 60% of their viewing audience.
That is a very good point there.
And what I do is I look at that and then I look at what I see as the feedback about the show on social media. And the overwhelming majority of the comments, overwhelming majority of comments replies to me, replies to Gary from Nerdrotic, replies to everybody. The overwhelming majority was I started off the first episode, tried to get through it. Maybe I tried the second one, maybe in some cases, but I never could complete it because the writing and the storytelling was so terrible, and it was an affront to Tolkien. And I could tell exactly what this show was by the end of the first episode. And some people said the second, and it matched up perfectly with what the stats were telling us about the viewer retention for the show.
Yeah.
And so I think, me personally, I think after season 3, Rings of Power is dead as a doornail. There's going to be what I think is going to happen, because I've had interactions with the Rings of Power fan base before.
Oh.
If you think that the Acolyte weirdos with Star Wars The Acolyte were bad, get ready if and when Rings of Power gets canceled. You're going to have a whole other animal on your hands, because even though they're a tiny minority, but they are absolutely insane. And so it's gonna be wild.
It's the Rings of Power fan base. When it comes to like levels of just deranged mental illness and abject insanity, are comparable to the R Sig Marxism side of Warhammer 40K's fan base. If you're familiar,
I
they're
know a tiny bit. Yeah.
they're a group that exists and is very interesting, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
That is something that should be studied, and then well, I can't say that on YouTube, but you get what my general feelings are there.
Well, the Rings of Power fan base is very, very interesting and funny to me. The vast majority of them, their knowledge on Tolkien comes largely from wiki sites, Tolkien Gateway, things of this nature. And I posted up, it was about a few weeks ago, I posted up kind of a what not to do when you're talking Tolkien post, and it was essentially like, I should not be able to, based on what almost like copy paste what you're saying and match it to what it says in a Wikipedia. I should not be able to do that.
Well,
And
that is an interesting thing you're mentioning there, because that's like a common what I like to refer to as a locust tactic, because when these people come into a fan base, it doesn't matter what fan base it is, okay? Like, it can be Lord of the Rings, it can be Warhammer 40K, especially in Warhammer 40K, happens a lot there. It can happen in, I did mention Star Wars, Star Trek, all of them. One of the things you'll notice is when the tourists come in, when the locusts arrive in their hordes, in their bot farms. Every one of like, an actual fan's comment base is that you make a comment online, social media, you know, and then you'll just get snowed under in all of these replies, and they're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
And if you go to
Yeah.
the wikis, you can go look at the wikis and then look at the online fans, air quotes,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
the Twitter horde of
Yeah.
Locust. They are all copying the wikis or just rewording it a little bit, and that's the ones that are inventive, which there aren't a lot of them. Um, and what they do is they'll try to do volume. They'll try to drown you out by volume. You know, it's basically like, here, I challenge you to a duel, and then you get drug into a back alley and shanked in the kidneys repeatedly. And because there's a lot of people saying the same thing, you'll get people who are like, well, they are making more sense than you. It's like, it's
Well,
easy
what
to try and make that argument when you're, copy pasting.
it's it's very obviously we're kind of all used to like the locusts and the leeches and the tourists within fandom. What kind of astounds me about Rings of Power in particular is how many Tolkien quote unquote scholars, like I bring up Corey Olson all the time, who have legitimately tarnished their reputation completely, and it, all for the sake of this TV show. Corey Olson, Tolkien professor, quote unquote, comes out, and it's widely assumed. I have to say that for legal reasons. It's widely assumed he was paid to say this. The guy comes out and says there's no such thing as canon in Tolkien.
Now, I can perhaps shed a little light here. You'll notice this in other franchises as well, and this
Yeah.
is pretty par for the course at this point, because a lot of the people who got into fiction back in the day, whether it was Lord of the Rings, Warhammer 40,000, Star Wars, Star Trek, because you notice this with like Star Trek lore scholars as well, or Star Wars lore scholars as well, where they try to make the new thing appear, more legitimate than it is. And the reason for that is twofold. One, they are allegedly, I would like to state this for legal reasons, they are allegedly being bought off. But it's also because a lot of these people come from a background that is progressive leaning in the first place.
Yeah.
And you'll see this with this happens a lot in gaming. Like you'll see, established lore for franchise, insert franchise here, oh, this is really cool, this is really great. And then, 2016 hits and suddenly you just got, all this DE&I in the cast and the writing's taken a nosedive, and, you'll notice I like to refer to it as filed off fantasy, like all of the rough edges have been removed from the story. And that's usually done in an attempt to appease the woke mob. It's done partially because they're afraid of the backlash if they don't. It's also done because these people were progressives to begin with. Now, no matter what they're, there are a couple of George R. R. Martin fan channels who, when George R. R. Martin was going through his whole getting canceled phase, were more than happy to throw him on the pyre because they thought that would mean that they would get in with the, with the in crowd, And also because they're hashtag believe all women, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with people in many cases who are already ideologically subverted. And so because they're all already ideologically subverted, it's very easy to give them that final little nudge.
I feel like ideological subversion is definitely a part of it. I would also say that um, gratuities are also an incentive as well. And the thing of it is, right? So, um, I wonder if I should name their channels. There's a couple of Tolkien centric, quote unquote, YouTube channels.
I can
One's
probably think of a few.
one's pretty damn large. And another one They're big on Twitter. They do their little newsletter, but their YouTube channel is relatively small. However, they get all kinds of interviews and access and things of this nature to behind the scenes stuff with Amazon and meet and greets and all of the things, right? If you look at when both of their channels started, it was just before or right at the beginning of production of season 1 of Rings of Power.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like a Men of the West or a I can think of a few other channels, but Men of the West comes to mind, Yoyston, who have been around for ages. These are influencers who were brought
Influencers,
about.
oh my god.
Well, they were brought about by Amazon to promote this TV show.
Creating the audience you want to see, which, by the way, ladies and
Exactly.
gentlemen, is not us. Um,
Exactly. And like I it's so strange to me and and they are so incentivized. I have to use that because I can't just flat out say they've been paid to do this, but
they have allegedly been paid.
they have been allegedly incentivized in some form or manner to not just um promote the show and completely kiss Amazon's ass, but also commit defamation towards other content creators who do not share the same opinion and absolutely blast the show on a consistent basis.
So
One of
funny you should
which
mention that. Funny you should
one of
mention
which
that.
is Gary from Nerdrotic. Gary from Nerdrotic had a hit piece put out about him by one of these channels that turned out to be blatantly false.
Surprise, surprise.
Um, the claim was made that he put out info that it was that they had some Indian gentlemen playing Sauron in season 2 of Rings of Power.
Mm-hmm.
Gary never did that.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually this channel who was trying to lie about Gary who were the first ones to put out that information, which turned out to be bogus.
Hell of a choice there.
Yeah, I know, and they did it just to defame Gary's character and try and make him seem like he was an unreliable source of information.
Unreliable, and also tried to make him look a fool, which is this
Yeah,
is another common locust tactic. So
yeah,
we're discussing, like, the fake fan channels. And I don't usually get into drama on this channel, but I will bring this
right,
up because it is important and it is something the audience should, as a rule, be aware of.
yeah,
Um, and part of the reason why a lot of this doesn't surprise me, like a lot of people, is because I saw this happen before. So if you go back about 5-ish years ago, um, 5-ish years ago, maybe more than that in some cases. But when Warhammer 40k started to get really popular, like when you probably, saw it like boost in popularity a while back if you've been on social media too. People who weren't even really
100%.
related to it got really interested in 40k.
Yeah,
A lot of the old lore channels and the people
yeah,
who had been talking about 40k a long time and had
mm-hmm.
usually like been making really high quality fan stuff. This included like the fan animation channels who were getting ganked by GW's legal team. Uh, they got a lot of hit pieces made about them by a lot of the channels who were getting a ton of access from GW in the form of, like, oh, we'll send you that new 40k game that's coming out. We'll send you a copy of that. You want the new Kill Team box set? We'll give you that too. Do a review on it on your channel. Here, why don't you go paint this new thing of Ultramarines? The 93rd box of fucking Ultramarines. You know, and they would do stuff like that where they would intentionally favor the channels that would push what they wanted and try to shoulder out or get rid of the ones who were fans. And that's part of the reason why all of this is not surprising to me. Like, it seems like it's just part of their standard playbook at this point. I mean, I don't know if you've
So
seen
just
anything else similar elsewhere, but
yeah. No, you're good. Just a quick hit, just doing a quick time check here. I got about 5 or so minutes left
Oh
before I
shit!
gotta.
Oh, God damn it.
Before
Well, before we
I, yeah,
go,
cool.
because
Yep.
we're I'm sorry we got all into this. But
No, no, you're good.
uh, before you go, just like kind
Yes.
of as a thing here, um,
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls, briefly,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
3 questions. Favorite game,
Okay.
um, least favorite
Okay.
game, worst quest.
Least favorite game, Skyrim. Although I have my two favorites. I can't just boil it down to. Um. Okay. So, how do I explain this? Favorite for gameplay would have to be Skyrim. Least favorite for story would be Skyrim.
Okay.
Um, favorite for the amount of kind of customization for your character would have to be Morrowind.
Okay.
And then favorite for story would have to be Oblivion.
You know what? I think we're gonna be really good friends. Okay.
Because I mean, the story in Skyrim is kind of big dragon. Who
There are
cares? Like,
there are really good side quests. Is all I'm gonna say.
well, I'm gonna say this: Mankar Camoran and Dagoth are way more compelling villains than Alduin the World Eater.
Okay. So here's the thing. Like Morrowind and Oblivion, all the interesting shit is going on in the game. Okay.
Yeah,
All the interesting
yeah,
shit is going on there. You're in it.
hmm
All the
yeah,
interesting shit in Skyrim happened 100 years previously, or like 50 years previously,
yeah,
and it drives me bananas. But
yeah.
we'll probably have to have you on.
Oh,
We're gonna
100%.
have to have you back on, dude.
We can do an entire Elder Scrolls stream. I would love that. That'd be
Because
great.
we got to like half of one of what I wanted to cover tonight, and
Okay.
I feel kind of bad because I know both of us like I tend to go off on tangents and like
Yeah.
ranty shit, but I do apologize for that.
Oh, no worries.
Gotta
No worries.
gotta have you
Oh,
back, dude.
we'll
You
we'll
are
we'll do
amazing.
it. We'll do a part two. Absolutely. Part
All
two, part
right,
three, however many parts we gotta make it.
cool, cool.
Cool.
Well, with that chat, High King Fëanor, Alpha Chat of Middle Earth. Tell people where they can find you.
They can find me at Alpha Chat Fëanor on YouTube. We're going to be having new uploads starting next week, and then you can also find me on X at Lost History 9. I post there daily. I talk about all kinds of crap, Lord of the Rings, random the YouTube drama, whatever politics, or just daily life. I talk about food. It's kind of just a place where I just randomly just post things. My stream of consciousness, as it were. So, those are the two places you can find me. And yeah, like I said, we'll have new content starting next week, probably next week, Thursday. I'll have a new video out. So,
Very good. Go sub to him, chat. His links are in the description. Do it now. Now. Go. Um, and naturally, we'll be here Saturday. Co-op stream. Everyone's invited, including you in the chat. I see you down there. All 17 of you. Thank you very much. Um, uh, Wednesdays we do our standard live streams. We'll probably be continuing Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. And on Mondays, I think we're gonna keep doing Dead Space. So you all will be free to, scare me in Dead Space in the future. Because I gotta finish that game out, I think, before Halloween. Yeah, well, after probably, considering, you know what, it's too late for me to be thinking too much about times. But that's where we're at. Thank you all very much for coming by. High King Fëanor, Alpha Chat of Middle Earth, my dude. I am very grateful, man. Like, this has been something I have looked forward to for weeks and weeks, and I am so glad you finally came on. I am very grateful to how just awesome you've been this whole time. Love to have you back on as soon as possible.
I'm looking forward to the next one. Absolutely.
And yeah. And yeah, I think that's all for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all very much. This has been